Awesome.
Cool.
Well, hey Dennis.
Hey.
I'm super excited for today's podcast. Full disclosure for everybody listening, we're going to keep it a little bit shorter, but that's on purpose because of what we're talking about today. We are filming this on Monday, July 1st, 2024, which is the Monday of 4th of July week here in the United States. I also believe it's Canada Day today, I think.
It
Um,
is, yeah.
but so lots going on here in North America, I'm sure around the world as well. But um, in thinking about what we wanted to talk about today, we felt like no time like the present, and obviously it's timely given the calendar, that we would spend a little time discussing what it means to kind of rest and recharge.
Yeah.
It's taking time off is something that is getting a lot of having a lot of conversations around that topic, both, in behind closed doors with people that we are really close to, but then also kind of culturally and on a broader scale. It's constantly in the headlines. What does it mean to work, to rest, to recharge, all of these things in today's day and age? So we thought we'd spend a few minutes today breaking this down, talking about how we think about it here at Career Sandwich, sharing some of our kind of favorite practical advice to take back control of that rest recharge time in your own life, and
Yeah.
hopefully inspire you to disconnect a little bit on the back half
Yeah.
of the week. Yeah,
I love it. I'm excited. It's a good
awesome.
topic.
I agree. I agree. All right, so we'll start at the beginning. Obviously, when we think about what it means to rest, recharge, take time off, there's a boatload of research that says why it's critical and why we all need it. I certainly don't think we need to go into the specifics of regurgitating why this is so
Yeah. Yeah.
critical for our health. Um, but I think when we think about Career Sandwich and our philosophies on things, and the cleanest way that we've been able to articulate the importance of taking time for yourself is to rest and recharge in the context of you. And
Yeah.
Dennis, chime in at any point, but
Yep.
the way that we kind of think about that is, look, every person's different. And a lot of the narratives that we see in the public domain are very, very generalized. Like, oh,
Mhm.
to take time off, you should take some extended vacation, or oh, you should go sit on a beach for a week and do
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing, or whatever it may be. They're very generalized statements that for some people may resonate. Like I will happily go sit on a beach for a week and not move. Like that,
Yeah.
the idea thrills me. But my partner, on the
Yeah.
other hand, pretty sure he would lose his marbles if I made him sit on
Yeah.
a beach for a week. Like that just
Yeah.
doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
So when we talk about it, and when we talk about it at Career Sandwich, we like to use the phrases, rest and recharge, but in the context of you. What
Yeah.
drains your energy?
Yeah.
What fills and like gives you energy? Lean into those things as you think
Yeah.
about what your time away from work looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the switch, right? Because like I think through my journey and my own personal journey of learning to like disconnect or recharge, I often I was the person where, and I still am the person who gets a little bit of really like a good, strong energy bump, and recharge from sometimes being connected in certain moments. Like I think of myself back at part of every year. It's like fond memories of like, everything's quiet. It's like my time where I like to kind of plug in and do some deep thinking and deep work.
Mhm.
And that I should be completely disconnected, and I take moments to do that during like the back half of the year, but I just love to also use that as like deep work time, and that often involves being connected in with things
Mhm.
that you just don't get to do when you're running through the week, or through the year. So,
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I even think about when we think about contextualizing resting and recharging, myself as
yeah.
an example, I think about my previous lives in my career where I was in meetings all day, every day. I was like on any given day, truly, I'm talking to anywhere from 10 to 40 different people that was
Mm.
just common practice. And so
Yeah.
when I needed to recharge my batteries, that often looked like stepping away, signing off, closing my
Mhm.
laptop, recharging, because that part of my world, that alone time in my world, was so rare that that's
Yeah.
what fueled me.
Mhm.
Now, I talk to a lot of people, but in a very different context, and it's not nearly as calendar heavy as my life once was. And
Mm.
so I'm actually finding that I get a lot of energy from the together time, right? When I come out to Columbus and you,
Yeah.
Julie, and
Yeah.
I get locked in a room for 4 days and crank through stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's still work, but in the context of me and where I'm at in my life right now, activities like that actually do recharge me. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's a reframe that I think is really important, just knowing
Mhm.
how fast the world changes, like what kind of different situations we're all in at any point in time. And there really is no one size fits all of what it means to disconnect or recharge
Yeah.
for every person. It's just there is no singular answer, and we'd be fools to try to
I
describe
I,
one.
I I totally agree with you on this, and I do think this is sort of why we have this like this very polarizing conversation. It's like,
Hmm.
when it comes to like remote work, or it's almost like there's only one way to do that or one way to do this. It's like this generational like shift that we're in around, like, well, we're not like, I don't think, and making some assumptions here, but I don't think anyone's saying like, no, I don't want to work and I just want to collect a paycheck. What
Hmm.
they want is support and balance to have the moments to recharge,
Hmm.
right? And the permission to say like, hey, I need to do this thing for me so I'm better for the employer, right? And I think that is sort of getting lost at times in this like big narrative around, it's either you're in the office and we're watching you, you know,
Hmm.
or if we're not there, you're getting your hair done and, not doing the work you should be doing, and you're out there, playing around during the day. And,
Yeah.
that's the reason why we're not performing as a company. And I just think we haven't really asked ourselves, like, and really had this conversation of like, I don't think anyone's saying I want to just take the time off and just collect a paycheck. People are saying, I just need to have you give me these spaces to recharge, because a commute to work is incredibly stressful for some people.
Hmm.
Then to come into the office with all that stress,
Hmm.
and then start your day is that's hard. That's hard
Hmm.
on someone. Um, where, you remove that and you can get a little bit more productive. So
Yeah.
it's definitely an interesting time in terms of this
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we started recording today, you shared with me a story of, and I don't know the specifics, but it sounds like in essence, someone had a hair appointment, they brought their laptop or their phone or something, ended up taking a work call while they're in the chair at this hair salon.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's sort of mixed response. Am I?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was, yeah, there was like a group of folks that were just like, and this is why we want to do remote work, or this sense of like, I can take my team calls at a hair salon. And
Mm.
I thought it was interesting. I was just like, wow, that's a lot to unpack, right? I worked at a well, go ahead, Shelby. Yeah. I want
What
to
was
hear
the flip side of that? Were other people saying like that's lame,
pretty
or
much.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it was pretty much like, I want to be able to, like, that's the best time for me to do the things like that I need to do. Like, it's easier for me to squeeze in an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have been on camera? I don't, I think people were like debating that. Now, I think every company is going to be different, right? I remember early on in my a few companies back I worked for, we were super open to, I mean, we were one of the largest fully distributed companies at the time before it was cool, as I say. And there would be people like literally like at the dentist popping in on a call quick, just
Mm-hmm.
like real fast, and like, hey, yeah, I can hop in. I mean, it wasn't a thing, right? I think it's assess your culture, but I don't think I think this consensus in that call in that LinkedIn post was, well, this isn't cool versus, well, that's a little bold. Then the blame became on this person for doing it, and where I'm just like,
I don't
we're
know.
back to this too. Yeah.
I don't, I think I would push back pretty hard on anyone who wasn't supportive of this person doing work while in the chair.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
reason that I say that is because culturally, we actually applaud that level of multitasking in a bunch of different facets. Like if someone's answering Slacks while they're flying
Mm,
to
yeah.
a company offsite,
Yeah.
like, oh, you
Yeah.
work so hard. Like,
Yeah.
what's the difference?
That's
Right?
so true. Yeah.
There
What's the
isn't one,
difference?
in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like,
Yeah.
one is just, I think the optics is that one is in service to the company, like, oh, this person's on a plane
Mm. Oh,
to
for
our
sure.
site or
Yeah.
coming to our office. Like,
Yeah.
they're committed to us. And yet we've created this
Mm.
narrative around, like, oh, if they're sitting in a chair getting their hair cut, then like they're not
Yeah.
spending all of their energy on us. And
That's the thing. That's
I
the
just
thing. Yeah.
think, I mean, this is a
Yeah.
multi-hour
Yeah.
conversation, but
Yeah.
on the whole, I just feel that, I mean, we live in a world where we have to maximize. There's more, we
Mhm.
don't really have a
Mhm.
choice, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, we don't have enough
Yeah.
time, we don't have
I,
enough, yeah,
and I think you take what you can when you have it, right? Like, I don't know that person's story. I don't live that person's life to know if
totally,
that's the only time
totally.
that they get to to be in that moment. And also, yeah, I don't know, but going back to the plane, being on a plane, like, I love that you say that, because there is almost this sense of like pride, of like how many,
Totally.
when you're like, where I was a complete opposite. I was like, this is the time where I'm checking out.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time I leave my house or whatever, I am not doing work until I get to that conference. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that conference is going to be a lot emotionally. I mean, it's a lot to do those things. I'm going to use this time in quiet to do me, and that means,
Oh,
recharge, sketch ideas, and
yeah.
whatever it could be. And I think that's what this whole thing's about, right? Like we said, it's like our framework is always going to start with know yourself. And I
Yes.
think take some time to ask yourselves, what do I need to recharge? If that's and design for that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
build that plan. Like, look at the options in front of you, right? Whether you have paid time off that's accrued versus, unlimited, or flex time, however they want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And proactively, like, walk through like the exercises. Okay, if I'm going to take this time off, that's like, if I'm going to go to a conference, like, how do I want to spend that time there recharging, if you can? Because like, for a lot of people, that's a lot. If you're introvert, I mean, yeah, I mean, planning those, we always try to plan for folks that we're like, okay, we're gonna have rest time, because can't be on for 4 days straight. That's just a lot. But
Yeah.
that also means checking in and saying, like, look, okay, I did the conference thing. I can't go out every night with work people. I need to go back to my office and or
Mm-hmm.
my quiet space or whatever, and recharge for the next day. But communicate it,
Yeah.
like, if so you'll feel less guilty about it too, right? It's like, what am I missing out? Like, well, this is who I am, like, I need to recharge, plant those seeds, and most people will accept you for it.
Totally. Well, this sort of second topic that we wanted to touch on, I think we've started to seep into, and this is sort of why do we have, on the whole, why do we feel like we have such a hard time stepping away and resting
Mm,
and recharging? I
mhm.
think that company talk track, cultural narratives, again, not to blame any one company or leader or
Yeah,
anything like that,
yeah.
but just on the whole, we've sort of adopted this mindset of work harder, get farther. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's enough proof in the pudding in the last few
Mhm.
years that tell us that that's not always true. But again, I think it's really important to state, there's so many articles, people like there's so much stuff out there that claims to have the singular answer, like, oh, it's go all in on this or all in on that, or it's this way or that way or whatever. And again, I think it's really important for us to like caveat the heck out of this is that work harder, get farther may work for some people in some
Yeah, yeah,
circumstances,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're trying to get something started and like up off the ground and
Mhm,
you're the one at the helm, then yeah, you're probably in a position where the more sweat you put in, the more you might get out of it. Like if you're trying
mhm,
to
mhm,
literally start something from scratch. Now,
mhm.
that's a completely different thing if you're part of a team of 20 at an organization that's 5,000 people and,
Yeah, for
and.
sure.
And so pausing to your point, like really checking in, knowing yourself, but then knowing the context around you. Is the energy I'm going to
Yes.
put into this, what is the likelihood that I am going to get like a valuable return on that investment? The
Yeah.
Dell example, I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw recently. Yeah,
I've heard about, yeah, that, yeah.
yeah, so for anyone listening, the TLDR, and I encourage you to go, it's very easy to find just on the internet right now, but Dell, huge organization, been around forever, obviously. They basically put a stake in the ground and said, hey, okay, we want everyone to come back to work. And if you choose not to come back into the office, you will be ineligible for promotions. Now, I read some articles, someone did the loose math of basically how far approximately people live from the office, what that's going to mean in terms of when they have to get up, the time it's going to take them to like
Mm,
get ready, get in
mhm.
their car, go through traffic, get to the office, all these things. And the sort of baseline number that was come up with that it's approximately 15 hours a week additional
Wow.
for most people to get from their home to the office. Now, that's not even contributing to, that's not doing work, that's not solving problems
Mhm,
for the
mhm.
company, that's not being part of teams, that's just a logistical transaction of moving their body from one place to another.
Yeah.
And so then when people did the math of like, okay, if a promotion's at stake, what's the average promotion I'm going to get? And what's the likelihood of that promotion? That's another real thing that we have to
Mhm,
consider. There's a lot of
mhm.
empty promises happening out in the world right now. Not a knock on Dell. I don't know anything about
Yeah.
Dell
Yeah.
specifically, but um,
Yeah.
and so basically, long story short, the vast majority of people said, I'd rather opt out of the potential for promotion because it's not going to be worth it to me.
Yeah.
It's not a smart investment of my time, my energy, because what I'll
Yeah.
get in return is likely not more valuable than what I'm putting in.
Mm, yeah.
And I highly doubt that that's what Dell was expecting.
Mhm, mhm.
But
Yeah, I'm
I
sure.
will say for just being, a step away from that, I got really giddy on the inside, just feeling like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of people thinking really
Yeah.
critically about their life and what
Yeah.
they need. And yeah.
And we all, I mean, one, that is a wild policy.
Yeah.
Because like even if you mean there's the commute time, but a handful of those individuals or some of those, not everybody, will also be plugging back in at some point in the evening, so it's just like it's all just this cycle of just kind of it's a strange request. But to your point, these individuals are checking in, but then there's also what if they didn't, like, folks will take a promotion and end up like, oh, I should have never taken that promotion, right?
Mm.
It's not at all what I want to do. Like, I'm too far away from the work that I love, So it's like this whole thing kind of ties back to know who you are, know
Yeah.
what you want. And once you know that, a decision like that, it's like, yeah, I don't even want the promotion. Like, I'm
Totally.
good with where I'm at. Like,
Totally.
makes it a lot easier than just saying, like, oh, yeah, more money and more promotion, more whatever. Check in, and your hard decisions are a lot easier when you have a plan, right? around that. But that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I think another thing that makes it hard for folks, I mean, similar, but also a little bit broader than the Dell example, is policies within organizations can often make it difficult for people to feel like they can take time away to rest and recharge.
For sure. For sure.
Um, we all know the infamous example of unlimited PTO, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give whoever thought of it, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they were genuinely trying to do the right thing, but our brains are weird and psychology is strange. And somehow, some way, unlimited PTO has actually resulted in people taking less time off.
Yeah.
The
Totally guilty of that. Yep.
great irony, right? Um,
Yep.
should we talk through some suggestions we have for how folks can proactively manage some of these policies that, again, like we're going to assume they're put in place with good intent, but
Yeah.
oftentimes
Yeah.
end up backfiring and do the counter of what we hope that they
Yeah.
do?
I think we should. And yes, and you already sort of started to hit on it earlier. And I think some of it is knowing the context,
Mhm.
right? Of where you're at, your ask, etc. So, you know, I take working on a team, for example, right? You're a team, right? I've had many folks who would take time
Mhm.
and they would take time at the wrong time.
Mhm.
And then that creates a bit of a trust, like a break in trust. It, I think sitting down and really doing that work to understand like what's the best time of year or week or whatever it is that for me and the team to still, because at the end of the day the business wants to be productive, right? They want to, they have, like, that's what we're here to do, to move the business forward. We get paid, we get perks, we get all these things to kind of help and support that. So to put the company in a position is where then it gets really stressful for everybody. So look at the context.
Mhm.
If that means, hey, I'm on call this week, can you swap with somebody? Can you say, I've seen that a lot where folks will kind of swap roles with somebody or communicate with their manager. Like like a lot of it is communication, right? You just don't like say I'm going to do this thing without the context and without communicating what you need on both on that. So to me, context goes a long way, and making sure that you're still setting the company up for success and for yourself at the end of the day, like,
Mhm.
you know, taking some time to assess like where a project may be, that if can you step away and truly step away and not feel stressed. Like
Mhm.
what's the point in taking the time if you're going to still be
Mhm.
sitting in that space? So I don't know, I think context is a big part of it.
I mean, I think it's, as just hearing you talk and knowing the million conversations we've had about this, it really does feel like the central pillar for the entire conversation of resting and recharging. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think we just need to shake ourselves of this illusion that there are broad sweeping answers that work for masses. There really isn't, right?
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
and I think there are best practices that we can look to, but no different than any other dimension of our health. Like
Yeah.
we do have to get specific, right? We do have
Yeah.
to say, hey, my
Yeah.
chemistry requires X, Y, and Z, or like I'm much more responsive to this type of exercise or that type of exercise, or pick your
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
I
I
think
mean,
this is no
I
different.
mean, yeah, I mean, like I go back to like the flex time. I mean, I was that person like where I just didn't take a lot of it, partially because I enjoyed at the time what I was doing. And it just was at a season in my life where it felt like that wasn't important. But I do know who people who would have used that. And
Mhm.
in the context is why that felt like it was being abused, right?
Mhm.
Is like, you're gonna do this right now at the end of the quarter when like
Mhm.
everybody's like you're
Mhm.
not, so I think that is a central, because that's what creates that um the tension around it,
Mhm.
right?
Is
Like,
norms, totally. Like
yeah, like,
perceived norms, yeah.
yeah. It's like, oh, you're when things are great, it's when things aren't, where people start to question, right? Like if and this is where I think like doing like automations,
Mhm.
like things like if you're in the place where you could set up your Slack or do some of the like let the tools work for you, the
Mhm.
business keeps moving, the project keeps working,
Yeah.
keeps moving. Like you get to step away, but everything else kind of like still moves along and chugs along, and that does wonders. And you building that bank of like, I'm a trusted individual that when I ask to take time away or when I need to recharge, the work, my output, and all the things that we agreed in our contract of employer to employee, like, will not be sacrificed based off however that's defined, right? So um letting the technology do work for you is smart this day and age, right? Especially if you have the ability to do that. And then keeping that communication channel open with your manager and your peers, right? Like advocating for each other, like helping if you see somebody who's like, hey, you need to like recharge,
Mhm.
have that be that person to like nudge them in that direction, because that it's easier to recharge than it is to like fight burnout, which is a
Yeah. Oh gosh,
whole
yeah.
nother thing. Yeah.
Totally. They're on the same spectrum, but one is a lot
Yep.
farther along than the other for sure.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. And, when we think about company policy and things that we're often up against, that I think one of the strongest examples that I see consistently when resting and recharging works, to your point, is when teams have shared context. So, like, if you're a leader or a decision maker, or if you have the ability
Mm,
to influence when your team takes time, you know, trying to corral people around a similar, call it a week or whatever.
yeah.
Like, hey, we're gonna take this week over the summer off, or we're gonna take the week in between, Christmas and New Year's. We're gonna
Yep.
take a holiday week off. Things like
Mm,
that I've noticed are very, very effective because,
mm-hmm.
to your exact point, like it puts people in shared context. We're going to do this
Yep.
together. We're going to lock
Yep.
elbows. We're all benefiting
Yep.
from this simultaneously.
Yeah.
Um, the flip side
Yeah.
of that, if you're a leader, decision maker, influencer of any kind at your organization, and people are taking different times in different contexts, you setting the example and supporting them in that
Mm-hmm.
goes so far.
Oh gosh, yes. That's yeah.
It's like it's impossible
Yeah.
to articulate how much that matters. And also the amount of goodwill that I mean, what is it? It's Monday morning at, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Mm-hmm.
a few hours into the work week. My
Yeah.
partner gave his team off. He gave them the week off.
That's
They've been working
awesome.
their tails off for 2 years. And he was like,
Yep.
everybody, you just take the week off. And he
Yep.
was nervous. He was super nervous that
Interesting.
his
Yeah.
leaders were not going to maybe respect that. And
Mhm.
comes strolling into the kitchen this morning, like starts making himself over. He's like, we're 2 hours in and like nobody's bugging my team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might be
Yeah.
working. It's
Yeah.
exactly that. It's the shared context, but then also the respect and the validation from
Yes.
the people
Yes.
who everyone looks to
Yeah.
means a ton.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that whole lead by example, and
Okay.
when you with a decision like that, I mean, that just says a lot about you as him as a manager too, right? To say, I'm gonna carve this out for you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think is awesome. And I
Totally.
think one of the other things that is nice is when you can maximize, like, not everybody, like we have folks that we talk to who are hourly workers versus folks who are salary workers, and like this is where that communication, that ability to look at context in your own life,
Mhm.
you know as well as what's going on in the business, helps, right? And each of those scenarios are very different, but all should be looked at, and everybody should have the ability to recharge in whatever flavor makes sense for them at that given time, right? I think that's where I think like I know folks who are on call, they kind of seem to manage that well, but like my brother, for example, they have policies where he has to be on call for a certain amount of time, and that's a stressful weekend,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I'm glad I mean, I'm grateful, I should say, that I'm not taking calls at all random times of the night. And but they also have a really strong like team support when that's going on. It's like, I have your back. Like, there seems to be a lot of good camaraderie around that, and I think that that's important, you may not be able to influence everything that's going on up here with these policies. The policy is the policy.
Mhm.
We all have to work a certain amount of time days,
Mhm.
on call. But at the team level, you probably have a little bit more flexibility to be creative with that, right? And sort of like figure out like, okay, well, what if you're burnt out, can you find somebody who could take that call and run that shift for you and swap it back in exchange, right? Because it's hard to be grinding all week and then have that coming up at you too. So just being creative when you can. And again, communication and context to me is like the big piece here,
Yeah,
personally.
yeah,
Nobody knows if you don't say it, like, hey, I
for
need this
sure.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of put a bow on the hourly worker piece, there are a lot of people that we talk to who do work hourly versus salaried, and it's a different beast for a whole bunch of reasons. But I think it's an even stronger example of the importance of reframing the whole conversation from take time off to instead, how do you introduce the habits of recharging into your daily, weekly hygiene, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
totally ridiculous analogy, I will preface with that, but it's like, our phones. I don't know very many people, if any, that truly let our phones go all the way to zero, right? If
Yeah.
you're running
Yeah.
low and you have an afternoon out and about, you're going to plug in for 10 minutes and get a
Mhm.
little bit of juice. Or if you're on a half hour layover, you're going to like get a little bit of charge like while you can.
Yeah.
You know, same with like hunger, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
not, if you feel the hunger coming up, like you might sneak a snack before you have dinner in an hour and a half. Or
Hmm.
we have this rigor in a lot of
Hmm.
parts of our lives where we know how detrimental it can be if we get all the way to zero, and we
Yeah.
take action to prevent that.
Yep.
We need to take that same level of rigor and bring it to the rest and recharge being a
To-
bold conversation,
totally
and
agree.
like
Totally agree.
bake it into our everyday
Yep.
practices so that we
I
don't
totally
get to
agree.
the point where we need some massive,
Yeah.
multi-month vacation,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
like feel like a normal human again. Like, I've lived that.
I,
It's not fun. I don't
yeah.
wish it on anybody. Like
Yeah.
I wish I had had better skills and better habits for
Mhm.
myself
Mhm.
leading
Yeah.
up to that so it didn't get to that point.
Yeah.
But
I love that. I mean, it's a great way to really explain what we've been saying here today, is just like the little things add up in this. And, you know, finding folks who've done it in the company that you're working at can be a great advocate for you, an example too. Like, if
mhm,
there's a playbook out there that person's using, like, how are they doing this? Like, have coffee with them, like figure it out, like, and borrow pieces of that and then try it. I think it's going to feel weird if you're someone who is constantly connected. It's going to feel weird to put some parameters in place to say, okay, like Fridays between, this time and Sunday at this time, I'm going to ask that everybody, you know, only if you need to get a hold of me, call me, versus blowing up my Slack or whatever it is. Putting those things in place it's gonna feel weird at first because you're not, it's new, it's different, and your body has been wired to work and at a certain like angst or whatever it may be. So give yourself grace to know that like it's gonna feel weird,
mhm,
but I think this week, with this being a holiday week, this is the perfect time to say,
mhm,
okay, Friday, we're all shut down, we're gonna shut down.
Mhm.
Maybe maybe you get, or I'm sorry, Thursday, then maybe you get that Friday off, and then whatever it is, like start to play with this. You
Mhm.
know, I know we have some scripts in there around this topic around like mainly around interviewing, but I think we have other things that we're going to include here to help folks get the tools to start to have these conversations more effectively. But think that consensus to me here is it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And I think if we can all as a working society like
Mhm.
understand that there's a couple different, you
Mhm.
know, ways we can tackle this, gosh, this narrative of on
Mhm.
or off would be a lot easier, you know. It's
Totally.
like
Totally. Yeah. I think that's a great sort of challenge to give to the
mhm,
audience today is
yeah.
when you look at the next week, particularly the holiday, if you're here in the US, um, pick something, whether it's 15 minutes or an hour or an entire day, if you're feeling that confident, but advocate for yourself in some way. This is something that would
Mm-hmm.
make that would recharge my battery a little bit, a medium amount, or a lot,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Just pick
Mm-hmm.
something
Yeah.
and ask for it in whatever
Yeah.
context you need to, whether it's at work or in your family life or with your friends, doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
exercise of self advocacy as it relates to this is what I need to
Mm-hmm.
charge myself and feel full
Yeah.
um,
That's a
takes
yeah, it's a
practice.
great,
And like, this is a perfect week to practice. So
yeah. It's a
that's what
great,
that's what I think I'd leave everyone on. This is an
I agree.
ongoing conversation. We're going to revisit this a gazillion times, both in the
Yeah.
platform and here in these podcasts. But um, great intro to our overall philosophy, what it means to
Yeah.
rest and recharge at Career Sandwich.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Shelby. This is great.
Yeah, I hope you have a great fourth. I hope everyone listening has a
Yes.
great fourth.
Yes.
Yeah,
Indeed. Awesome. Cool.
cool. I'll talk to you
Thank
later.
you.
See
Later.
ya.